Hi, Kevin Shaw here, full-time English teacher, part-time English tutor, founder of the Right Method Tutoring, and I want to talk to you today in my reading comprehension series about, there's so many different aspects of reading that contribute to reading comprehension. Does a student understand what they read, right? So let's talk about a journal writing strategy, and this goes under maybe note-taking, right? So if students write something down that they read or that they listened to, they will process that more completely. And as we write things down, we're actually becoming clearer thinkers. Okay, I want to give you 3 little journal prompts to use as you are taking notes. And this is in the realm of making connections between what you read. Okay, so your students are not very motivated to read what they're reading. And so outside of changing the reading assignment, if you're not homeschooling, the student, let's say, is stuck with the reading assignment and they can't really see the relevance of this reading assignment. But yet they have to read it anyway if they want to pass the class, take the test, do the essays, all of that. So what do? Right? You write. So I have a journal that I created for my students, and it has 3 different areas that allow students to make a connection. Okay? So whether they do this in a Cornell style note-taking format, so here's your page here, and you fold it into a third. We're not really talking about that necessarily. For what I'm talking about now, you can just fold that piece of paper in half the long way, and what you do in the left-hand side of the page is your heading, is one of 3 headings. And on the right side of the page, you have your content, what the student's actually going to write. So one of the prompts or the questions can be it can be connections to self, right? Meaning text to self. If they're reading a story by Sandra Cisneros, that's the text. Self is themselves, right? So text to self. How does the story of Salvador relate to me? How am I similar to Salvador, right? And so you're going to write about those connections in a very informal way. Salvador and I both have siblings. Salvador takes his younger brother Arturito to school. And Salvador doesn't have a lot of time to himself, just like me. I have a ton of chores to do, etc., etc. The second of 3 areas that your student can write about in their journal to make these connections with what they read is text to text. So in the story Salvador Late or Early by Sandra Cisneros, which is about Salvador walking his little brother to school, and that whole scene there, that story can relate to other stories. So if that story reminds you of, let's say, a story, another story by Sandra Cisneros, you're going to make that connection. And so a prompt might be something like, Salvador Late or Early reminds me of this other story about Huckleberry Finn. In the story Huckleberry Finn, Huckleberry is feeling very responsible for his friend Jim. Jim is somebody who's African American, and others are being prejudiced against that student or that teenager, right? So you go on and on and on about that. So you make that connection. The third connection students can make, again, we're talking about reading comprehension, and reading comprehension really relies upon how engaged we are with the reading, how interesting it is to us, therefore, how much we retain of that story, right? That connection would be text to world. So the story Salvador Late or Early reminds me of what's happening in my neighborhood. In my neighborhood, there are a group of students whose parents I never see. They are girls in elementary age, 7th and 8th, well, middle school, let's say, 7th and 8th grade, and they have their siblings that they walk to school, and they care for their siblings, and they make sure that they cross the street safely. And this makes me very happy to see that, but sad at the same time, right? And you can go on about those reasons. So remember, if your student is struggling with how to find meaning or relevancy with what they read, have them pull out a journal page and to make connections to self, connections to other texts. So text to self, text to text, and text to world. Okay? So hopefully that helps. If you want to know more about these tools or different reading strategies, look in the description to reach out to me. Thanks.